Okay. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Shaquita Double and this is the Conversations with Mentor series. And for today's episode, episode 8, I have the pleasure of speaking with the hosts of the Badminton Podcast, Jeff Tho and Henry Wong. So welcome here, you guys. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having
Thank you,
us,
Frida.
Shaquita.
And for those of you who may not know Jeff and Henry, they are the hosts of the Badminton Podcast, which highlights players and their stories from all walks of life. And they inspire listeners like myself to be better athletes and people. Apart from the Badminton Podcast, they are also the founders of Volant, a sports apparel and equipment brand based in Australia. Their passion for the sport really shines through as they work towards making badminton a truly global sport. To add to their already impressive resume, the, outside of badminton, Jeff Tho is a dental surgeon, a owner and coach, while Henry Wong is a registered veterinarian. So far, this has been one of the longest introductions I've done. So I hope that I got everything right.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, and since I have two guests, and this is the first time I'm having two guests on an episode, are you guys down to play? Who's most likely to?
Sure. We can
Sure.
answer this at the same time maybe, and then we'll see if we get the same answers.
Okay, cool. Who's most likely to become a famous actor?
Jeff.
Henry.
Is there a reasoning behind this?
I don't really like the limelight very much.
Okay, who's most likely to be paranoid?
Henry.
Henry? I think so. I
Okay.
don't know.
Sure.
But,
I,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't actually know. I'm just taking one for the team there.
Oh, okay. Who's most likely to be successful as an on-air personality?
On a what?
Jeff.
Did you get the question, Jeff?
As an
Sorry.
on-air personality, Jeff.
Yeah.
As an on-air personality. I'm not sure I have the speaking voice like you, Henry. The presenting TV announcement voice, I tend to just make it up on the spot.
I do remember our friend Joseph said that I did have a radio presenting voice or something like that not long ago.
Yeah, you do.
So yeah, perhaps I'll claim that one. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, what about who's most likely to get away with murder?
Me.
Henry.
Wow, no hesitation.
Henry's dodgy. He's dodgy.
Wow.
I wouldn't be able to live with it. I'd have to tell someone. Whereas Henry would just keep it
Take
quiet
that
and
to my
on.
grave.
Wow, I'm learning things today. Okay, and the last one, who is most likely to be the most creative?
Neither of us.
That's a tough one. Can we split that one?
Yeah, no problem.
I'll say me. You can say you.
Alright. Okay. Me.
But not clearly defined.
Okay, cool. Now we're just gonna jump right into I guess your background and that kind of thing. How did you guys get started with the Badminton Podcast?
I can take this one,
Okay.
Shaquita. So as you said at the beginning of the podcast, we do have a brand called Volant. Now, what you described as Volant being a sports and equipment or an apparel company is true. That is what we do. But
Yeah.
I guess it's important to know the reason why we did that, because that links into the podcast and why we started the Badminton Podcast. So
Yeah.
the reason why we started Volant is we found that, especially in Australia, people didn't recognize badminton for the amazing sport that it is. People don't understand how good the athletes are. what it takes to be the world's best, how hard you have to train, how fit you are, how fast, strong, powerful, skillful, all these things. People don't understand. They think it's an easy sport that you play once or twice and you're good at it already.
Yeah.
And to Henry and I, that was the reason why we started with Volant. And the vision behind Volant, and the thing that we wanted to have as our vision was to show the world how incredible badminton is. So really shine the spotlight on badminton and make it a more celebrated, more recognized sport, especially in a country like Australia. Of course, in Asia and in certain parts of Europe, it is already recognized as that high level sport, but we wanted to bring that to a global level. So one of the things that we did with Volant was we made clothing and we make rackets that look good, that make it easy for people to get into the sport. So there's
Yeah.
no big flashy colors that are deterring, or we reduce the complexity of starting to play badminton with our
Yeah.
gear. And that's what we want to simplify the badminton journey. So simplify someone getting into badminton. So
Uh,
that leads on to the reason why we started a podcast. We started looking at things that other sports had that badminton didn't. So
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff on YouTube on badminton, but if you look at tennis stuff on YouTube, there's 100 times more. And and then podcasting. So there's so many podcasts about so many different topics. And when we first started the badminton podcast, we were probably the only ones that were releasing content on a regular basis for the badminton community. And that's what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be an area where we can talk to badminton players from all walks of life, whether they're past players, current players, if they're professional, even if they're social players, because everyone's got a great story to tell. And
Yeah.
we talk about things other than badminton as well. We speak about climate change. We speak about how to choose the right shoes for badminton. We talk about how to do strength training for badminton. We
Yeah.
talk about so many things alongside badminton as well as badminton itself. And it is our way of showing the community that there's a lot of badminton players out there who love the sport as much as you guys do, you guys and
Yeah.
girls do. And we want to band together and build this community so everyone is sharing their knowledge, and we're like a global badminton family. So that's why we started the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And well, as a listener of the Badminton podcast, it's very insightful. It's also there's also a lot of fun interviews and so on. And I also wanted to know, how long did it take to sort of develop that brand? Well, apart from Volant, how long did it take to, make it go from an idea to an actual podcast? Henry, you could probably take that one.
It's a tough question. I think that when Jeff had the idea of creating a podcast because of his experience in sort of the dental podcasting area and what he had learned in that space, it was quite brief in terms of the ideation phase. It was very much okay. Let's do a badminton podcast because there isn't one, and it would be fun. And I think the key word there is fun, because for us, we do really enjoy those conversations. It's not like if you think about going to work or whatnot, first thing in the morning, you're sort of dreading it. But when we have a podcast on, we're ready, we're excited, we're happy to talk and learn from these guests that come on to the show as well. So it was really fun process for us, and it was just okay, let's just do it. And we started doing it, and initially we did it with as many of our friends as we could possibly find that was in the
Yeah.
badminton community. So you'll see that within our first 10 episodes or so, more than half of the guests were either ourselves or friends, because we just wanted to firstly, I guess, connect with them because we are so close to them and we can really have them open up on the podcast. And we were very inexperienced ourselves at the time. Not to say that we're very expert these days, but certainly we know a little bit more than we did back then. And it was good to just sort of open up the conversations with people that we knew already. So it kind of just blossomed from there, and we've just been doing it ever since.
Yeah. And, moving forward with the podcast, did you guys have any doubts or probably struggle in the first half? because I mean, it's well, listening from the very beginning, you guys seem like like you have such a handle on it. So, what was that process like in the beginning?
The beginning was a fun process. So, like Henry said, I did have some contacts within my other work that do run their own podcast. So, they definitely didn't tell me what to do, but I was guest on their podcast prior to us starting the Badminton Podcast. So, I had
Yeah,
some level of experience. I listen to podcasts as well. So, we use some of those things and plan those into what we do in our own podcast. But I think the
yeah,
experience of being a guest on a podcast really helped just in terms of the booking of the times and the transfer of information and the topics that we do talk about. But it's just a very much a learning process and still a learning process for us. So as Henry said, we did talk to people who we knew that it didn't matter if we stuffed up or if the
yeah,
episode there was a couple of times the episode just didn't work out and we didn't release it at all. And that was just a learning process in
yeah,
in in developing the podcast itself. But we started off with 6 episodes before we actually launched it, just because we wanted to make sure that we had some more than one episode to release it at the start.
yeah,
But from there, it's just been something that we've slowly developed along the way. I was editing them myself at the start, so if you do go back to episode 1 to about 10 or so. They're pretty
yeah,
poorly edited. They're pretty rough, but they do the job. And then we
yeah,
started getting an editor to help us to enhance the listener experience with some music and better background noise cancellation and mixing and things like that. So we're at a stage now, I think, that we're very happy with the editor that we're working with, and we're confident with the work we're getting back. And it's just
yeah,
about finding more people to share more stories. And we at time of this recording we are almost at 100. We are at 90 episodes of the
yeah.
Badminton Podcast, so we're excited to get to that 100 mark as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. And I'm not sure if you guys may answer this question, but I guess you can probably do like two or three each. What has been your favorite episode so far?
I'm pulling a face because I think every second or so episode, I'm like, yep, that was the best episode we've had so far. And the most recent episodes that we've released, the one with Martin van Durmelen, I think I am butchering his surname now.
Yeah,
I think for me was very eye opening, and it was a very insightful conversation. Is it
yeah,
my favorite podcast? I'm not sure, but it is my current favorite, probably because it's nice and fresh in my mind.
yeah,
So yeah, I'll go with Martin. But there's definitely been so many quality guests on, and it's really hard to fault any of the episodes. Personally speaking.
Me, I like a lot of the episodes that we've released. I'll be a bit biased there.
yeah,
There is a particular episode that was just Henry and I talking that I've actually referred a lot of the players I coach and a lot of players that ask me for advice. I think I referred you to that episode, Shaquita, as well.
yeah,
It's the stop overthinking in matches episode, and that's really about how to manage the pressure on court and the expectations, and when you're really nervous and you can't play properly because you're thinking too much and you're too scared of the results that you can't actually play your game plan.
yeah,
That's personally a favorite for me, because that podcast is my career summed up in one episode, and basically so many things that I learned in my career are all just jam packed into there.
yeah,
But other than that one there, I would say the ones that I was able to do with the athletes or the players in person at the Malaysia Masters and Indonesia Masters tournaments at the start of 2020,
yeah,
start of last year. So they were with Kirsty Gilmore, there was Brees Levedez, there was Rude Bosch, there was Josh Herbert Yu. So we had, and Sam McGee. So it was great to actually speak to them in the hotel room and talk to them that way. And for
yeah,
some of those episodes as well, we had Gronya Somerville, which is one of the famous badminton players from Australia. She was
yeah.
co-hosting with me as well because Henry wasn't there. So I'd say that were probably some of my more enjoyable ones, mainly just because I was able to talk to them face to face.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it a bit when you gave me advice. I think it was after we did the podcast. And yeah, I found it really insightful. And that was actually how I got this idea of conversations with mentors, because I hadn't really had the opportunity to, just go on a limb and, like pick on a coach's brain in that way. So, stemming from that, Jeff, what like, do you have a specific coaching philosophy that you go by when you're coaching your players?
Okay. So number one would be to make all of your sessions or whatever you're doing as specific as possible to badminton. So that's a
Yeah.
huge one for me. So if you're doing a drill, then you're doing it with the intention that it is like a match, or you're setting yourself up like a match. You're not just running through the motions just because your coach told you to.
Yeah.
You're focusing on a particular aspect of whatever you're doing in order for you to be able to use that in a match. So that's a really, really big one, because that comes down to your ability as an athlete or as a player to take the most, say, boring or the most repetitive kind of training, and you can make that the best training in the world if you are focused on the right areas. So, for
Yeah.
example, if you're doing just drop net, which is a standard exercise that everyone all over the world does. If you're just doing a
Yeah.
drop shot and then slowly coming in and playing a net shot and then going back and playing a drop shot, you won't get anything out of it in comparison to if you're practicing a different type of drop shot every time. You're practicing slow drop, a fast drop, deceptive drop, like a stop drop, like you're doing a jump smash, but then you do a slow drop instead. And then when you take the net, you can take the net high, you can take it low, you can spin one way, you can spin the other way, you can do so many different things just with two shots, and it's
Yeah.
completely up to you as to how you train it, and it depends on what your focus is on at a time. So if your focus is on making sure that your net quality is very good, then maybe the drop shot you won't focus as much. You just make sure you get the drop shot over, and then your focus is really moving quickly towards the net.
Yeah.
So that's probably one that's really important to me, is to make sure that whatever you're doing, it is specific to a match, whether it is technical training like that, if it's physical, if you're running, if you're doing running, there's probably not that much point doing a 20-kilometer run. It doesn't really help you for
Yeah.
badminton. You might want to do 400-meter sprints instead, because that is a lot more like badminton. So I think that will
Yeah.
be one of my main philosophies as to how I like the players to train.
Okay. And also, just to build on that, what do you think is your favorite part of the coaching process?
The favorite part of my coaching process is two things. The first thing is when you see a player try something new and see the benefit or understand the benefit of actually doing that thing. So
Yeah.
being able to open their mind to something and them try it and it works, or even if it doesn't work, that
Yeah.
if they can be open enough to try it and take it on, then that's what I really enjoy about it. And the second thing is hard work. I'm very much about hard work in everything, whether it's training or work or whatever that I do. So I really do enjoy pushing the players hard, especially
Yeah.
physically, because I think that's where characters are formed and born, and
Yeah.
you really determine what kind of person and what kind of player you are when you're on the brink of exhaustion and you're fatigued.
Yeah. And Henry, what do you think is your favorite part of playing badminton?
Mm. Playing badminton, the
Yeah.
favorite part. It's hard. I think it's very hard for me to pinpoint what aspect of badminton I love the most. I think, doing trick shots is always fun. You know,
Yeah.
you know, making someone almost break their ankle with a trick shot is always great. But I don't think it's the only thing out there. I think for badminton, if I were to pinpoint it into a specific thing, it won't be a specific type of shot or point or anything like that, but just more the actual growth and development process of playing and getting better, and knowing that there's always something you can improve on every time you play,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you're playing professionally or socially. There's always that sort of next step that you can get to. And I
Yeah.
find that really rewarding about the sport.
Yeah. And so to um sort of summon from that, how did you guys originally get into the sport, and Jeff moving on to like a more international level and trying to compete for the Olympics? So I guess you guys can take it from there. Yeah.
Okay, perhaps I'll start because Jeff's story will probably be a bit longer than mine. I think for me, my badminton journey was relatively swift and short. Obviously, it's still continuing, progressing today, but I'm
Yeah.
talking more from a junior standpoint and when I was, I guess, first introduced to the sport. So my earliest memories of playing badminton was actually on an oval somewhere with my mum and my sister when I was very young. We bought those very cheap rackets you can get from Kmart, or Kmart is a department store. I'm not sure if it's if it's over there where you
Yeah.
are, Shaquita, but basically a department store here where we bought some cheap rackets. And my memory of playing badminton then was literally just hitting it up in the air, and that was it. And
Yeah.
however many years later, when I was suddenly introduced to badminton again, when I was about 15 or 16, I played racket sports, so tennis, predominantly most of my sort of childhood life. I was playing tennis, and then when I got to 15 to 16, a very close friend of mine who also I played tennis with introduced me to badminton, and it's sort of the love and passion for the sport just grew from there. I was in a very small sort of community that didn't really have many badminton players. So I grew up in Adelaide in South Australia, and back then there wasn't as many Asians, and Asians tend to bring badminton with them, as we all love that sport. So there weren't that many of Asian people in Adelaide, so there wasn't that much in the way of badminton there. But I fell in love with the sport and then just wanted to play it all the time, every day, and started to compete in the sport and was playing 7 days a week. But I started late. That's not the excuse that I'll use, that I didn't make it to sort of national level or anything like that. But I started late, and I sort of played for the state team in South Australia, and I met Jeff through badminton as well. Through the community, we had mutual friends, and I had heard of him, and we had met at a hot pot event where one of our close friends has a annual hot pot birthday dinner. So we met there, and we also played at the Australian University Games together. And in terms of my, I guess, competitive badminton life, that's probably where it ended. And now I'm mostly a social badminton player, which is sort of how I started to begin with, and which is why I love the social badminton community so much.
Oh, wow. So I'll be shorter than yours, Henry, I think. So no, like I started playing when I was just about 8 or 9 years old. My dad used to play in Malaysia, so I have a Malaysian Chinese background, but we moved to Australia when I was just a baby, and that was I was playing soccer and swimming at the time as well, and then badminton kind of took over, and I started to focus my attention more on badminton when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and that's when I made my first state team. So my older brother and my older sister played, and they played for the state, and I really wanted to do that. So I started training at quite a young age to try to get to the state level, and I
Yeah.
was able to get to the state level, and then basically keep playing in the state teams and the national teams, etc. And probably as a junior, the highlights would be that I played in the Commonwealth Games, the Youth Commonwealth Games, in 2003, I think it was, in Bendigo, which is actually my hometown in Australia.
Yeah.
And also then it was the World Junior Championships, and that was around the time where I got into the national program to train with the national team. And from there, it was lots of training, international tournaments, and trying to get world ranking points up and trying to qualify for the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games. Unfortunately, I just missed out, but I had a great time along the way. I met so many great people that I still stay in contact with. had them on the podcast as well. It's great to see them again.
Yeah.
And from there, I started my studies, my university degree in dentistry, and I kept playing, and I played 2 Commonwealth Games in 2010 and 14. Since 2007, I was actually carrying a bit of a hip problem, and it was maintained quite well throughout my career. But in 2014, it got really, really bad. So I had to have surgery in 2015, which basically put me out after Commonwealth Games in 2014. And then from there, I did start to play some doubles.
Okay.
So I played doubles for a couple of years before I started just settling down and doing more coaching. So at the moment, I do coaching with the national team, the national Australian team, and I also play some of the local tournaments here and there just for fun. But even though I say it's for fun, I'm very competitive still, and I do not like losing. Even though the body can't do the things that I expect it should be able to do with no
Yeah.
training. Um, but but from that point of view, I do spend some time with Henry on court, where we're filming things like our racket reviews and our other videos for our YouTube channel, and also just having some fun and playing a little bit of social badminton, but not quite as much as Henry.
And you just touched on it a bit, but I guess both of you can probably elaborate a bit more on that. But how was it, that process of balancing school along with badminton training and tournaments and so on?
Yeah, so it is a bit of a tricky balance when you are trying to train and qualify for events such as Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games. With regards to the Olympic Games, when I was doing my Olympic campaign, I took actually 3 years off university study to so that I could train full time and play full time. So there wasn't that much balance there. I did have to work as well because, of course, badminton in Australia isn't a paid sport by any chance. It's basically all self-funded. So I was working part time while I was training, and
Yeah.
while I was in Australia, because we spent a lot of time overseas playing tournaments. But when it comes to balancing, say, study and badminton, it is just really about what your priorities are and not wasting time on things that you shouldn't be doing. And I know that sounds really, really simple, but when you are busier and you've got more to fit in your schedule, you do tend to be more efficient because you have to fit it in. So it is
Yeah.
really about pretty regimented scheduling. Like if you talk to Henry, I'm very regimented in terms of my calendar. If something's not in my calendar and it goes ahead, then I'm usually not in the best mental state because I'm not ready
Yeah.
for it. I like to be very, very well planned and organized.
Yeah.
And that's what I brought through with my university studies as well as badminton, is that when I was playing badminton. When I was studying or doing something else, I was doing that, and it was basically planned in terms of the way that I spent my time. It wasn't just by default.
My perspective, I think
Yeah.
mine's a little bit different because the tournaments that I was participating in were usually a car ride away. So, 20, 30 minutes from home. And the only time I needed to travel were for, the Australasian Championships, which happen, say, once a year. So in terms of that side of things, travel wasn't a big issue for me. So I was able to sort of balance out that time pretty well.
Yeah.
Unlike Jeff, and as Jeff mentioned, he is very regimented in the way that he goes about his, personal professional life. I am inwardly structured but outwardly chaotic. So I know what I need to do and I know what needs to be done, and I will get it done. And that's usually how I got through my, I guess, playing/studying life during high school. So I knew what needed to be done in terms of my work in high school, projects, assignments, etc., and the goals that I was trying to achieve as a badminton player as well. So
Yeah.
that's generally how I did it. I guess it's a combination of time management and just being aware of what's required of you based on what your own priorities are as well.
What are some of the other lessons or things badminton probably taught you about your life?
I think because when I started badminton at the very young age, I already had I wanted to play because it was fun at the very beginning, but as soon as I saw my brother and sister playing for the state, I
Yeah.
knew that's what I wanted to do, and all of a sudden, it just made me want to achieve and set goals and achieve them. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's I've brought in into my life as well. And I guess from the motivation piece, the thing that I've learned is that if you see yourself and you can constantly remind yourself about why you're doing what you're doing, then it is the motivation will come if you want that thing enough. So I
Yeah.
remember as a teenager, no one taught me to do this. I just thought it was a good idea, and then I would look and read other stuff later on in life and realize that I've been doing all this all along. I used to basically put up the scores that I wanted in school. I used to put that up on the mirror in the
Yeah.
bathroom, like a piece of paper that says the score, which was basically the highest score you can get, which is 99.95. I put that in there, so I'd see that every single time I went to the bathroom, and I'd know why I'm studying so hard. And I'd do that the same for any tournaments, for any Australian teams, for anything like that. So I think one thing that I've really learned is that if you want something enough, then you've got to make it enough, and you need to remind yourself enough times as to why you want that. Otherwise, you'll get lazy, and then the drive won't be there anymore. So if you're trying to lose 10 kilos on the 1st of January because everyone does with their New Year's resolutions, if that constant reminder is not there, then it is hard to stay motivated because you get carried away with life otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I've also learned is just really trying to be focused on one area at a time. So, especially during the time I was studying, sometimes I did struggle to focus purely on the study in that moment because I was thinking about, say, badminton. But then when I'm on court training, then I might be thinking about something else. So, really trying to train my mind and really focus on the thing that I'm doing at that point of time, because that is the way you're going to get the most effective use of your time.
Okay. To you, Henry, what were some of the lessons that badminton has taught you so far?
Tough act to follow. You know, there there are so many different things and learnings that I've taken from badminton. I probably distill it down to, I guess, two key things. The first is in relation to hard work, and that is that what I learned is that if you want something, you need to deserve it. So you need to work hard for it. You need to persevere and you set those goals and be able to achieve them by working as hard or harder than those that are trying to achieve those same goals as well. Because like the many people that you see and from a high performance perspective, they're usually the hardest workers in the room. Uh, I know there's a lot of talk and buzz about you know people working smarter, not harder, but the most successful people that I've seen in life tend to be the ones that work the hardest, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've learned, just that hard work mentality and the willingness to go after what you really want. The second thing would probably just be the value of relationships. The Coming from a social badminton perspective, having learnt the sport pretty much from playing social badminton, the relationships that you gain from being a part of the sport like badminton, and I'm sure it's the same for many other sports as well, but in particular the relationships and the value of them that you can get, because they are your best friends for life. A lot of the time, you might have started knowing them when they were 15, 16, even younger, but even these days, now I'm 30 and some of my closest friends are still badminton players. So it's just that value of the relationship in that community that I've learned.
Okay.
Add on to that hard work piece as well for me. Sorry
Yeah.
to jump in, but I think the badminton's really taught me about hard work and making. I said effective use of your time, but really that hard work piece that has kind of stemmed into all aspects of my life, where it's a little bit of a curse at the moment now, because sometimes if I don't have a productive day or I don't get everything done that I wanted to, then I'll feel very frustrated about that because I'm so used to trying to achieve every single day, just achieve
Yeah.
what you can achieve in that day. And if it feels like I could have done better for that day, then it is a little bit frustrating. But I think that badminton has really made me understand the importance of that hard work, of that grind. Even though, like Henry said, there is this work smart, not hard philosophy, which is true. But I will add to what he said, and he said that the best players or the highest performers are the ones that work the hardest. I'd
Yeah.
say they do both. They work smart, but they also work the hardest as well. So there's no, I really don't think at the end of the day there is a substitute for just hard work.
Yeah. And I also want to roll back a bit at speaking on like overthinking, and you referred back to that episode as well. Can you probably give a bit more insight to the viewers? I know you gave me a bit of homework in terms of watching the movie and so on. So can you give a bit more insight into like um what you said about overthinking and that kind of thing?
Oh, I'll have to. I remember planning for that episode
Yeah.
and thinking of the five main points there. So I might not remember all of them just
It's
based on
okay.
the spot. But I guess what we spoke about after our podcast that we had was that overthinking part and being in the moment. And that's when I asked you to watch the movie The Peaceful Warrior. It's based on a book by Dan Millman, and it's about an American Olympic gymnast who has an accident, breaks his leg, and he's basically on the road to going to the Olympic Games, and that happens during that time. And it is just really about being able to be process focused rather than result focused. So rather than worrying about what's happening after the match, like if you win or you lose, rather than worrying about what people think, rather than worrying about what you expect of yourself, but just to really focus on the process and be in the moment of what you're actually doing and playing and what your game plan is. And it's definitely easier said than done. But in the podcast, we do run through some processes as to how you can start to, to get your mind back into the moment by asking yourself particular questions that are going to help you bring you back to this moment rather than focusing on things external.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much a summary of what we spoke about and the podcast. Although the podcast does cover a few other aspects to it, which Henry might be able to share as well.
Yeah. Do you guys remember like the name of the podcast episode? Probably we can probably tell the viewers so that they get a bit more detail from it.
The name is Stop
Stop
Overthinking
overthinking in
in
matches.
Matches.
Okay,
Yes, but
great.
I will confirm that in one moment.
And the episode, I literally just sent it to one of my friends, or Joseph. He was on the podcast as well. I literally just sent it to him. It is episode number 32. It's
Okay.
called "Stop Overthinking in Matches," and it's a community Q&A. Because someone asked a question. They asked, I think it was related to a serve, not being able to serve in the tightest moments. Their hands were shaking and they couldn't do a good quality serve. So that's
Yeah.
what sparked that conversation.
Yeah. And stemming from that, um well, based on research, two of the most common things that athletes face are injury and performance anxiety. So, is there anything in particular that um, you'll help with? I don't know, players. It could be anyone, or in training, that you guys help your players sort of get through those tough moments.
I would say that two things about this point here about performance anxiety. The first one being that everyone is very very different. So some athletes or some players will listen to really loud music and get them really pumped up beforehand. Some will listen to relaxing music. Some won't listen to music at all. Some will do a very rigorous warm up where they're sweating and puffing and they're breathing really heavily because they weren't warmed up really hard. Some people just warm up really lightly and they're just playing fun games and nothing too serious. So what I'd say to that point is because everyone is very different as to how they perform under pressure or with anxiety, it's important to find out what works for you. And the only way that you can know what works for you is if you test it. So if you test listening to really loud music, or test listening to soft music, or test doing a vigorous warm up, or test doing an easy one, and just seeing how you feel on the court after doing these tests. Because once you find the right one, then you'll do that every single time and you'll train it. You can train it.
Yeah.
So every time when you go to training and you've found the right thing for you, then you can train your warm up to make you mentally and physically ready for your matches. And that can definitely happen, because quite a lot of the time, the performance anxiety happens usually in the first part of the match and at the very end of the match.
Yeah.
So the first part of the match is very much related to the warm up, how you prepare mentally and physically, which is what you can train. And then when you think about the at the end of the match, when it's getting a little bit tight, that's where that podcast episode comes into handy, where you can refocus back onto the process, back onto the game plan. You stop worrying about what other people think. You're back in your own mind as to what needs to be done in the process rather than the results. And you can also train this in your sessions as well. For example, you can play matches that are starting at 18 all or 19 all. There's only 2 points in it, and that can put the pressure on, because you can't lose one of those points, otherwise it's already a match point for the other person. So
Yeah.
you can you can simulate these kind of game scenarios in your training itself by playing matches like this, 17-19 up or 17-19 down. All these kind of scenarios you can train. Of course, it's not going to be perfect like a tournament, but the more expectation you can put on those little matches, the better. You can always. We did an exercise where we put coffee, or we put a drink on someone. So not you're not betting with the person you're playing. Someone external watching, like myself, was
Yeah.
betting with someone else watching that that someone would win the match. So all of a sudden, the players on the court, they weren't just playing for themselves, because they knew that if they lost, then someone had to buy a coffee because of them. So just
Yeah.
little things here and there that can add the pressure on, because yeah, like I said, the performance anxiety quite often is at the very start and the very end. Usually in the middle, you usually can you get into the match, you can get more into the flow state and into the zone.
Yeah. Henry, you mentioned that you also played in the university games and so on. So during your playing days, when you were in tournaments and so on, how did you build that mental toughness?
To be honest, I don't know how mentally tough I was as a competitive badminton player, and you can see Jeff laughing there. I probably wasn't the fittest of players either. You might see me and think, oh, you look quite fit because you're skinny, but I think all my fat is visceral. So you can't really tell how unfit I really am. I think from a mental toughness perspective, it was more just for me personally on court, I always felt very confident in myself, whether or not I, was the best player on court or not. I was comfortable being on court and felt at ease playing, especially when it came to singles. Even though I might not make the most strategically smart decision on court, I was always confident in myself, and I think believing in yourself is a very important thing for players. And I guess coming from a social perspective, having played with players that predominantly play social badminton and entering tournaments, and we talked about performance anxiety briefly just then, is that sometimes you just need to play a few tournaments and get used to that sort of high level of play or high intensity style of play to actually get used to that kind of level, or to bring yourself to that kind of level and not be affected by anxiety,
Yeah.
performance anxiety as well. So for me, I always felt pretty comfortable whether it was competition or whether it was, social badminton. But I think it really stems from that individual as well. So an individual approach is what needs to be made.
Okay. How about you, Jeff? How did you build that mental toughness throughout your career?
Um, for me, the mental toughness side of it comes from wanting wanting it enough. So regardless of what happens on court, and if you don't play well or if you do lose, then wanting it enough will give you mental toughness in itself, because you know the reason why you're trying to do what you do, and you're going to get up every single time because you want it enough. The second part of it is preparation, mental toughness, and I think just general confidence in yourself comes definitely from preparation. So if you have prepared well, if you've trained hard, you've trained well, you know your physical base is strong, you know you've done the hard work, then when you step on the court, you can be confident and you have less anxiety and you have more mental toughness because you know you've done the hard work, compared to if you haven't done the hard work and you know maybe the other person on the other side of the net has done it, then it is difficult to break that mental barrier and just say, hey, I'm going to beat this guy because I believe I'm stronger or I believe I'm more fit. But deep down, you know you haven't done the hard work. It is, you can't lie to yourself. You do know, and it comes from a deeper level. So I'd say preparation is a really big thing. And it also comes back down to that warm up. It also comes down to how you prepared just for that match. It
Yeah.
comes down to how well you rested the day before. How well did you eat the day before? All of these things that you've done in preparation for your match is going to give you more mental toughness, as you know you can walk on the court being more confident because you're more prepared in what you do. So I'd say the preparation stage is very, very important. And then the second one about mental toughness is knowing that you want it enough for the right reasons. So if you don't want it enough, then it's very easy to just lay down and give up and say that's too hard. That's okay. But if
Yeah.
you do want it enough that you're so stubborn that you're going to get it, then the mental toughness is going to be there regardless.
Yeah. And, sort of moving on to the preparation part of it, there are also a couple of questions on journaling and visualization. So, do you all have any thoughts on whether that's a key component in the preparation process?
100%. So I'll just a brief thing about say journaling. So journaling is really important to basically get all the thoughts out of your head, and whether
Yeah.
they're good, bad, or indifferent, get them out on a piece of paper so at least you can sort through them and you can just get them out. I think a really important part of journaling is to focus on the wins. So when you do journal, just making sure you're not just writing a sob story about yourself, but you are saying, okay, I did these 5 things well today. Even if it's something really, really small, even if it's, hey, I ate that apple instead of eating that cake. Like that's already a win. So write it down, because all the little things do build up onto each other and they do
Yeah.
make a difference at the end of the day. So journaling, in terms of the journaling, yes, I think it's extremely valuable, and making sure you are writing down what you achieved that day, whether it's big or small. The second thing with visualization is, I think a lot of people know the power of visualization in what it can do, because the physical body can't tell whether something's vividly imagined or if they're actually running through the process physically itself. I'm definitely not advocating for not training physically. You
Yeah.
definitely need to do that because the physical condition is so important. But when you are in a situation where you are trying to get that mental toughness and prepare well for your matches, visualization is a really, really huge, important thing, where you can visualize things going basically the way you want it to go, so that when you actually do it, it's just like following what's already been planned. So if you visualize the way that you're going to warm up and you're going to hit and you're going to prepare, you're going to jump around this way, you're going to listen to this kind of music, and then you get on the court and you play and you visualize yourself playing amazingly, you feel like you're floating, flying, you can get everything back, you're invincible, your control's good, your touch is good, everything like that,
Yeah.
then you're much more likely to be able to replicate that in physical form. So I think that the visualization part is extremely important.
Okay. And have you guys ever tried it or
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So visualization and journaling was a huge part of my playing career. I don't do it that much anymore, which I should be. But from a playing perspective, definitely. So if I visualized well and I visualized myself playing, so one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was feeling. The three words I used when I visualized was cool, calm, and collected. Because
yeah.
when I did get nervous, then my whole body would freeze. I wouldn't be able to play properly. But when I did feel cool, calm, and collected, then I was able to play very, very well and very freely. So that's something I'd visualize me basically moving around in court, cool, calm, and collected. And they were often words that I used a lot. And it did help me very much. In terms of the journaling, it is something that's, like I said, it's just about focusing on those wins, and you do feel better after it. There are some scenarios where I would maybe sit down. Even now, these days, I would sit down for a good half an hour and just put pen to paper and just write constantly and not
Yeah.
stop. And that's just because I'm just unleashing all of the thoughts that are in my brain. And after that process, it is does feel very good. And often all the problems that have surfaced have either been resolved already, or I've got already got a way that I think it can be resolved. So I think it's really important to not keep everything in your head, and to
Yeah.
actually get it down on paper.
Yeah. Guys' favorite uh badminton experience so far can be probably from a tournament, probably a funny anecdote in training, anything like that. Could probably start with Henry.
Uh, okay. I will avoid talking about university games because it's related to both Jeff and myself. I'll talk about another event. I think
Fine.
one of the most memorable events I've had is if you remember earlier, Shaquita, we talked about visiting or going to our friend's birthday on an annual basis for hot pot, and
Yeah.
it was my first Australasian carnival event. It's called the June Bevan. It was, I believe, it was 2006. I was there under 17s, 2006, I believe, and it was when I first met Sam, who is the birthday boy for the hot pot event that we went to annually. And what was interesting is that Sam had a very strong crush on one of my very good friends who was on our team in the South Australian national team. Her name was Leanne, and it was a really like it was just a very memorable and enjoyable experience. The entire carnival itself, being able to connect with so many different players across Australia and New Zealand who I can call, some of my closest friends today. But
Yeah.
what was, I think, quite enjoyable, and when I look back now, and I'm sure Sam looks back at this now, is that he gave a gift to my good friend Leanne, and it was a crystal bear that said, "I love you very much," and it's just really deep within my memory and impression. It was perfectly timed because he was very anxious about we're talking about performance anxiety. He was very anxious about the process, but he had prepared for it. And basically, when the music had stopped, he went up to her and gave her the "I love you very much, Crystal Bear," and it was an incredible moment. I won't talk about the details after giving the bear, but unfortunately, it didn't
It
go
did not work.
as smoothly as as Sam had hoped for. But of course, we look back and laugh now. So, but that carnival was certainly one of my most enjoyable badminton experiences.
Mm.
Uh,
Um, this is really difficult because I've been on so many great trips with so many close friends, um, and yeah, I'd probably say one of them would be just the whole World Juniors experience. So we were for my World Juniors was 2006, and it was in Incheon in South Korea. and I was there with two of my very very close friends who are badminton players as well, and just just the stuff that we would talk about and do, and it's just I actually can't remember exactly what we would do, but
Yeah.
it just reminds me of such a great trip. Actually, there was one scenario where one of my good friends, Salia, he's Sri Lankan, and
Yeah.
he's Australian, but he's Sri Lankan, and we were in Korea and we're looking for laundry detergent to wash our clothes. And of course, we walked into this convenience store, and it's in Incheon, not Seoul, so the likelihood of someone speaking English there is a lot lower. And the guy didn't speak a word of English, but my friend Salia just kept saying the words laundry powder to him. And the first time he didn't understand, but then for some reason he thought that the other 9 times he said it, even if he slowed it down, like laundry powder, for some reason, Salia thought that he would all of a sudden understand
Yeah.
9 times later. So that was a really funny moment for us because we're just laughing, and he's just trying to explain it to this poor Korean guy, and he's saying the same words 10 times to him, but he still doesn't know
Yeah.
what it means.
Yeah, you guys have some great stories so far. And another question, another lighthearted question was do you guys have a favorite quote that you sort of relate to daily?
He's laughing. I actually have a lot of quotes, but for some reason, Henry thinks I'm going to say a particular one by Steve Jobs, which
Go ahead, do it.
which I might say anyway because I can't think of anything at the moment that that would, yeah. I've got heaps, but I'll just say this one. It's Steve Jobs' one that he says you can't join the dots looking forward. You can only join the dots looking backwards. So all you have to do is have faith that the dots will eventually join together. So I guess I butchered the actual quote itself. I can't remember the exact words there, but it's just basically saying that things. I don't want to say things happen for a reason because sometimes that makes people think that they don't have any control and
Yeah.
they're at the whim of whatever happens to them, which I don't believe at all. But I think that when you do things that you think are right at that time, and then as a consequence of what you do, think other things happen because of it, then when you look back, then you'll be able to see that, hey, it all worked out. And maybe if it didn't go this way, I'd be in a completely different position now. So have faith that the dots will join in the future, and
Yeah.
and keep doing what you're doing.
Like Jeff, I have a lot of quotes that I've seen, heard, and probably enjoyed, and then that sort of stick in my mind for periods of time. And every now and again, I would see another one. I think
Yeah.
the ones that usually are quite relatable, or I enjoy reading and thinking of and trying to live my life by, the most typically are to do with work ethic and limitations. The one that I have, I guess, most recently read that I, sort of have thought about quite deeply is one by Charles Dickens, and it is I wear the chains I forge in life. So it's about limitations that you hold on yourself, and the chains that
Yeah.
you forge essentially are those limitations that in life you create for yourself, because it is related to your own mindset and the limitations that you place on yourself, just internally, and yeah, about how you actually you end up living your life based on these limitations, and they're sort of holding you down like chains.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those were two very interesting quotes. Just really like to sort of draw back, the topic of badminton specifically to the guest country of origin. So, what do you guys think is probably missing in terms of Australian badminton be consistently at the top in world badminton?
How many hours have you got, Shaquita? I'll do one. So I think in order for us to, or us, or less popular, or where badminton is less popular level, the first thing is improving the level of participation at the grassroots level. And I think if we invert that problem, it requires exposure and the demand for the sport. So the first thing we need to do is to create demand. And sometimes it's a bit like that chicken or the egg thing. Do we need a Carolina Marin? Do we need a Momota? Do we need this really, aspirational role model that everyone goes, oh wow, I want to be like them? And then the players start to come in, and certainly there's hopefully going to be someone like that for Australia at some point. But how do they get to that point if we don't have enough players coming into the sport, developing, progressing, and competing to get to those high levels? So it's hard because it can't really pinpoint a single element that's required to get a country like Australia to that high level. But I think it does boil down to the sport in itself and getting participants to play the sport, not just getting them to start playing the sport, but to get them to continue to play at a high level and try and compete to become the world's best.
It's related to exposure, so more in the short term. So I think Henry, when Henry's talking about grassroots and building participation, then yes, we're gonna if we're able to do that, then we're gonna see the benefits of that in 2 or 3 generations of badminton players, because the hopefully the Olympic gold medalists from Australia, they're probably very, very young at the moment, because we need to nurture their growth and development as players. But from more of a short-term perspective as to how we can get the level of our current players or our up-and-coming players to a world-class level, I think it's going to be related, one, to exposure, which is going to be spending a lot of time overseas, training camps, playing international tournaments, those kinds of things, because we need to have that exposure to push the limits of the players.
Yeah.
And in saying that, then because I'm actually at Badminton Australia, we're working very hard on the pathway between the juniors and the seniors. So once you hit that 18, 19-year-old age, then it is very tricky to jump to that senior level. And what do you choose? Do you choose your study? Do you choose university or work, or do you choose badminton? And I think that the development of the pathway, even though there's not money that we can pay people to keep playing badminton, but if the pathway is clearer and the the other top players are achieving better results, then I think that it will be a machine that it won't be able to retain all badminton players, but at least it has a higher chance of retaining more, because there is a system in place that's going to help them to get to the next level.
Yeah. And I know you touched on it a bit, um, but I guess you both of you guys can sort of elaborate on this. But was there a particular moment that you remember clearly where you guys uh, were really proud of yourselves in terms of pushing through the hard moments, let's say in training or a badminton match?
Yes, I'd probably say there's a couple of really proud moments that I've had, and a lot of them actually come in my junior years that I remember. And I think one of them was when I was playing in Australasian, so Australia and New Zealand based tournament, and I was injured a lot of the time beforehand, and I didn't get much training in. And I remember playing the match, and it was the worst match ever. It was the ugliest match. It's not one of those nice matches that you see, but it was just
Yeah.
really about grinding and just getting every shuttle back, and just not looking pretty, but just not giving up. And I ended up, so I lost the first set, was down in a second, and I just ground it out and managed to win in 3 sets. So I think that was a really proud moment for me, because that's when I really truly understood that winning isn't always funning. It's not always fun. It's not always
Yeah.
pretty, but you just have to really get through it and grind through it. And I guess on the second part of that, it would be probably when I won my first national title. That was a really big achievement for me as a younger badminton player.
Okay. What about you, Henry?
My moment would probably also take me back to my junior years, and it was probably at one of the under 19s carnivals. And as part of the South Australia, if for my generation anyway, our men's team was not particularly strong. So I played as the second ranked singles player, only having played badminton for just over a year. I think 1 to 2 years, and when I entered the under 19s team. And I remember playing a fella from New Zealand who, from all accounts, was a better player than I am. And it was a teams event, and it was expected that this player would beat me. And it was expected that this player would also do quite well in the individual tournament that comes after the teams tournament. So I was sort of the dark horse on court, and funnily enough, I was able to beat this gentleman in 2 sets fairly comfortably. I don't know how I did it, but I did it, and I was pretty proud of it. I don't actually remember what I did at the time. It just all fell into place in terms of his playing style versus my playing style. So it was a really great moment for me, and my team was very very proud of me for the rest of the day as a result. But I guess in conclusion, we did lose to that team, but I won my match.
Yeah, that's the important part, right? uh,
Exactly.
Probably we're a bit over the time, so I'll put forward my last question to you guys. Was not really a question, but if you guys can probably offer some words of encouragement or probably some advice to student athletes right now who are finding it difficult in this COVID-19 era, and probably balancing badminton and school at home.
I can go first here. So for those who are struggling to balance or struggling with COVID, I would say that just remember that every step forward is worth something. Um, to put in financial terms, you can't lose money if you're making money. In that,
Yeah.
if you aren't able to do a full session, a full gym session, a full run, but you can do half of it because of the restrictions or because of school or something like that, then allow yourself, be okay with yourself just getting that done. I know I'm an advocate for hard work and pushing yourself, which you definitely should do when you can. But sometimes when you aren't able to fit something full in, or you can't do the training today for some reason, get down and do your push-ups, do your sit-ups, do your body weight squats, because every little thing can help. And don't discount the fact that every time you're choosing to do that as well, rather than just say, oh, it's too hard today, I don't have time. Every time you're just choosing to do it, even though physically it might not be that hard or not that long, you are building that mental muscle and to be able to say, okay, I'm going to get this done regardless, even if it's a quarter or a half of what I usually would get done. So I'd say that. So just keep moving forwards. Take any step forward you can. If it's a big step, awesome. If it's a medium step, awesome. If it's a small step, awesome as well, as long as you are moving forwards there.
Okay. And Henry?
Mm. I think for me, I'll go less on the detail and more about the situation itself. We're in pretty uncertain times, and there's not really a playbook for what life has to offer at the moment. So I think it's important to know that it's okay to not be okay when things are this challenging. And I'll finish with a quote. It's not really a quote, but you know, in between stimulus and response, there is a gap, and in that gap, there's the freedom to choose. So when you have so many different things, coming at you, whether it be COVID-19, whether it be homework, whatever it is that you need to do, no matter how hard it gets there is that gap where you get to choose how you respond to it. And if that response, is that you're not okay, that's okay. But as Jeff said, if you can take one step forward and progress one step, then try and do that if you can in these challenging times.
Yeah. So I think that's a positive note to end off on. So I just want to thank you guys for being a part of the Conversations with Mentors series. And if you have any last words or thoughts you'd like to share at the moment.
Yeah, I'll go. I think what I'd like to say is that first of all, thank you, Shaquita, for having myself and Jeff onto this episode 8, and
No
we really
problem.
hope that those that are watching / listening to this episode do enjoy it and are able to take something out of it. I think when we talk about trying to build the sport in countries where badminton is less popular, it is people like yourself, Shaquita, that helps move that or shift that needle a bit closer to where we want to head with, making badminton a global sport. So we do really appreciate what you're doing here, and yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
No problem.
Rita. And of course, I will shamelessly plug that if you are looking for some other badminton related content to listen to, then make sure you do check out the Badminton Podcast. You can listen to it
Yeah.
on any of your podcast platform like Spotify, Apple, Google. Just search in Google the Badminton Podcast and it will come up. And yeah, and there's lots of listening there for you as well.
Yeah. And also to add, I think you guys also mentioned the YouTube, and I also follow the Instagram. So what is the Instagram handle?
So the Instagram handle is Volant, so VOLANT .badminton.
Okay.
And on YouTube, it's just Volant. And then if you want to visit website as well, it's just www.volantbadminton.com.
Okay, great. So I'll put all of the information in the description box below, and uh, I would really recommend listening to the podcast, and it's very interesting. So once again, thanks guys for hopping on and being a part of it, and to everyone watching, thanks so much for being a part of this, and I'll see you guys for the next episode.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Shaquita.
Bye.